Thank you. And keep in mind that was BC, not AD. So the two readings was, one was in Genesis and the other one was in Proverbs. Now, back to this business of resentments, which are infinitely grave, which there is an avenue by which we can, and the book says, resentments has to be mastered. And when we were studying the book and looked at that word mastered, mastered does not mean in the sense of you can control them. But we looked at one of the definitions, and mastered means resolved. You see, we think we can resolve something in our head, but we never do, because remember, in our head we got a complex systems of emotions and thinking. And a lot of times we're in our emotional makeup when we think we're thinking. You know, we sit here and we're in turmoil, and people say, well, what are you thinking about? So, well, I'm just thinking about this blasted weather. No, you're feeling about it. You're not thinking about it because you're caught up in your emotions and your feelings. Because if you were thinking about it, why would you waste your time sitting in some place thinking about or something that you can't do anything about at that time? So you're feeling it. So we have to be able to distinguish between our feelings and emotions. And when we look at this in our thinking, when we look at this on the board about Brown, his attention to my wife, we ask ourselves, what part of self was affected? It's my social instincts, my pride, my prestige, and here's another rule of thumb. The culprit that causes us and justify us using all of these instincts is pride. Pride is the culprit that justify using the social instincts, using the security instincts, and using the sex instincts. So when we look at this, we have to start from the outside to get to the inside. And we ask ourselves, as Bill says, why we were angry, and then we found out that it was our social instincts, our personal relationship, our pride, our prestige. Well, as a matter of fact, this one here, attention to my wife, it wiped us all the way out across the board. It affected everything. Now, as column 4 says, well, what did we do? Well, the thing is this. Well, if I hadn't been so selfish in my drinking, if I hadn't been dishonest, and if I hadn't been self-seeking and frightened and inconsiderate, I wouldn't be in the position where Brown could pay attention to my wife and threaten my instincts. You see, it looks like Brown did this affect me here, and I got the resentment. But what really started was over here. You see, this is our thinking. And these are our emotions and our feelings. And when somebody hurts us, this is what we're hurt. Indignation. How dare they? Remember, it says they don't have to, they can either hurt or threaten or interfere with this. And when we look at this, see, this is a part over here. We carry around, and this is a very keen thing, up here in our mind, certain thinking. And this thinking that we carry around, we think that is hidden, that is secret. And I dare say that whatever thinking that you have, you're going to act it out. And if you don't act it out immediately, some fool is going to come along and going to affect you, and you're still going to act it out some kind of a way, because they're going to be able to touch and affect your emotional makeup in a way by which you wouldn't care other people to see. Now I'm going to say that another way. Anytime we react or we respond to a sick person, that let us know that our thinking over here is sick. That let us know that we've been carrying around harboring selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and inconsiderate thinking. Because if we had unselfish, honest, generous, and considerate thinking, no one could affect this, because this would be under the care and direction of the power that gave you these instincts. When someone can touch your instincts, that means that you're carrying around selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened thinking. Clear clipping. You're not going to react to a sick person unless you got this type of thinking. Now, if you're thinking, now remember what our book says. If your thinking is clear of wrong motives and wrong intent, then these things are healthy. Case in point. I'm going to talk about two very controversial things. Most people don't want to admit publicly that we may harbor a little bit of these things in our mind. And one is homophobia, and the other one is bigotry. No one wants to be seen like that, but I guarantee you, under the right pressure and circumstance, you're going to act out what you're thinking. And then they're going to say, oh, no. And the first thing they're going to say is that, oh, no, that's not me. I grew up with a black person. Or I have black friends. But their thinking is going to predict their actions. You can't hide something like that. If that's in you, it's going to come out. So therefore, it would behoove us, and I'm going to tell you another thing how it comes out. There's no way that you're going to harbor thinking like that and you're going to interact with people. I'm going to tell you a clear clipping. You know, my wife, this is the most difficult thing for me to be able to use this is at home. My instincts are threatened, and they're hurt, and they're interfered with more at home than they are anywhere else. You see, you all can't affect my instincts the way that my wife can. See, I've got emotional and material investment there. And also, sometimes I harbor in my mind, and it plays out to me sometimes, you know, she's a sick person, so just forget it. But sometimes she's not that sick. And it backfires on me. Now, I'm telling you something. See, I should have made this disclaimer. I am not talking at you all, and I am not talking about you all. I am talking about me. That's how I can understand this. Nobody is oblivious. Remember what it says. No human being, however good, is exempt from these troubles. I don't care if I had 10,000 years. I'm human. I got these instincts. And at times I get sick. But the key thing is I got a way to get back well. I was talking to Joya about that. We all get sick sometimes, but we don't have to stay sick. But some people get misery. They just want to stay sick, and they want to make everybody else sick, and then they want to blame everybody else, and then that justifies them being sick. But the point is that my wife can affect my instincts, and the reason she can affect them is because I have this thinking over here. One thing I've learned is this, fellas, and that's this. Any married guys in the room? The thing is what you want to ask yourself. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? I've learned to be happy. So therefore, I don't have to be right all the time. And when my instincts are threatened or hurt or interfered with, it's something that I'm harboring over here. And even to the point whereas I may not be selfish, I may not be dishonest, I may not be self-seeking and frightened, but at all times I'm inconsiderate because I don't consider what she's got going is important to me or the household. You know, I'm more of the household thing, you know. And she comes up with these ideas. I want to do this. And I'm saying, well, you know, what is it doing to the household? You know, are we budgeted for it? No, I just want to do it. Well, we just can't do it. You know, and then her feelings are hurt. And then when her feelings are hurt, guess what? She affects my instincts. Because I don't want to suffer her being unhappy because she can stay unhappy too long for me. I'm serious. She can stay unhappy for weeks. I be wanting to get past it and get over it. But the point is that, you know, we have a term in the States, and that is, when mama is unhappy, ain't nobody happy. So the point is that these instincts are they're real sensitive at home. But when I'm over here and being unselfish, here's another thing. I got a 10-year-old son. He doesn't know anything about instincts to the point right now. So my instincts got to be healthy to help him develop his. Now, you know what? Ever since the day he was born over here in the fourth column. I have to teach him not to be selfish. I have to teach him not to be dishonest. I have to teach him not to be self-seeking and frightened and not to be inconsiderate. Because he wakes up here with his emotions right here. See, these are our emotions and this is our thinking. And the only thing he knows how to do is to satisfy his emotions. So I have to exhibit sound, healthy thinking and have him to put it in correct aspect. In other words, thinking or intellect over emotions. You see, here's another thing. When that baby is born, they can be 3 months old. And you're changing their diaper, and you wiping, especially the little boys, and you wiping them and cleaning them, little thing jumps up there. Now, he knows nothing about sex, but it's working. He's oblivious to that. He has no wisdom, no knowledge about what that is. But he's got standard operating equipment. I want you to consider about that now. Now, here he is, 3 years old, and here's the thing, we're going to talk about this a little bit, because people say, well, he got a sex problem. No, he ain't got no problem with sex, it's how he's using it. Sex works fine. But the point is that how you use the sex is the problem. Inappropriate use for the sex with the wrong person at the wrong time for the wrong reason. There's not a person in the room that has not, at some point in time, used the sex act, and the moment you got that little reward, felt a funny feeling in the pit of your stomach. Whether you believed in a higher power or not, that's an innate inward feeling to let you know that you misused that instinct for the wrong reason. Standard operating equipment, call a conscience. It lets you know right and wrong. So this is not complex. None whatsoever. It's being aware of your instinctual desires and knowing how and when to use them and for what reason. We know when we lie. You know what? I've never told a lie and didn't know I was telling it. Now, I don't think you have either. Oops, I told a lie. I didn't know it. No. Premeditated thinking. And the reason we lie is to protect these instincts, how we look, consequences, what people might think of us. You know, I've tried to develop the position in life today, what you think about me ain't my business. I can't control it anyway. So why is it my business what you think about me? That's your business. So I don't harbor this thinking over here. And if I do a 6 and 7 and ask God to get rid of it. God, you know I don't want to think this way. Because if I'm thinking this way, guess what? I'm feeling this way. And if I'm feeling this way, guess what? I'm going to act that way. I'm going to act out. So when we look at this, Brown's attention to my why starts over here with his thinking. Because his thinking is selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Self-seeking and frightened is we're frightened that we're going to lose something that we have, or we're frightened that we're not going to get something that we want, that we coveted. And it makes us, and here's the key thing, when we read over on page 69, it says, forget about Brown. Forget about what he did. We resolutely look for our own mistakes. Where have we been selfish? And this is the key of a thorough inventory. Because when we do a step 10, it is important to understand the basic instincts, because step 10 is a monitoring of the instincts on a daily basis. Remember, they're indicators, and we have to monitor those. So basically, these two things work in concert with each other. They work off each other. And this is which sort of mystifies people. You see, on one turn, the instincts, which is self, which are so sensitive, make you feel so good, there is a reward. These instincts within himself, trying to fulfill them and satisfy them, at times, they make us selfish. They make us dishonest. They make us self-seeking and frightened, and they make us inconsiderate. You see, they're survival instincts. You see, let's just use this for instance. Let's say that you got two people out on the desert, and you only got enough water for one. I dare say, very many people are going to say, no, you take the water and go ahead. It's going to be a fight because of self-preservation. That person is going to feel that they have more right over the water than the other person. These things make us selfish, they make us dishonest, they make us self-seeking and frightened, they make us inconsiderate. At the same term, now the way it works backwards. If we are selfish, and if we are dishonest, and if we are self-seeking and frightened and inconsiderate, it makes these sensitive. Anybody and everybody can touch these. So this is how we analyze and get to the exact nature, the root cause of our problem. That's why our book says selfishness, self-centered, we think is the root of our problem. Driven by 100 forms of fear. We step on the toes, this part here makes us do, and we put ourselves in a position for people to hurt us, and it says seemingly without provocation. But invariably, we find that in some place in the past, we've made decisions based on self that later place us in a position to be hurt. You see, this is what we talk over in step 5. See, these are character defects. These are flaws in our makeup. These are flaws in our thinking. And they're a result of emotional instability. Emotional deformities. We learned that when Bill was telling us about that in the 12 and 12. This is how and when and where that we were warped emotionally. And here's the kicker to it. These are circumstances and situations. These change all the time. It don't have to be Brown. It can be Mr. Johnson. It don't have to be Mr. Johnson. It can be Mr. Wheeler. These change all the time, but these two things never change. This is a human makeup. And it's what's affected and how deep it's affected. Let's mention one more thing. You see, our emotional makeup self, we can harm people deeply, more deeper in our emotional makeup through the sex conduct than we can by slapping them. When a person is harmed here, this is our emotional makeup. This is our essence. We can say this is our soul. And when we're sick here, we're sick here. And when we're sick here, we're sick here. And this is where we have to get well. Now, guess what? Self can't fix self. So we have to turn this over to a power greater than self. And when we turn it over to a power greater than self, and we ask God to remove this selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, inconsiderate thinking, it says, when we straighten out spiritually, we straighten out mentally and physically. That's how it's supposed to work. But we try to work out here all the time. We change this area. Well, if a Brown makes me mad, then the hell with Brown, I move somewhere else. And that don't work, and the resentment is still there. The injury is still there. We carry ourselves with ourselves. I don't care if you move across the pond, somebody like Brown is going to interfere with you, and you're going to be resentful all over again. You see, these are circumstances and situations. It don't have to be Brown. All it have to do is somebody to do something what Brown did. Right back up there, you can give control of your life over. So the point is that we talked this over in step 5, and step 6 says we were entirely willing to have God remove these defects of character, which step 6 talks about the willingness. And step 7 says we humble ourselves and ask him to remove this. See, we can't change our thinking with our thinking. We have to humble ourselves and ask and turn these over. And once we change this, these are healthy. Makes no difference who does what or what they say. We're under the protection of this. And step 10 is the monitoring of the instincts on a daily basis. Now, we're at 4 o'clock. We're going to do this 6 and 7. Let's take a look at 6 and 7 in a greater detail. Victor, before we move to 6 and 7, I want you to turn to page 70. The last paragraph on page 70 is now listen to this, is the first personality change we should have. This is going to emphasize and reconfirm what we're talking about, living a spiritual life and how we should react to life. Because 6 and 7 is changing our response to life. Changing from an emotional response to a rational response. Could you read the last paragraph on page 70, Victor?
If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men.
Toward some men.
All men.
All men. Who?
Even our enemies.
Even our enemies. That's excuse me. That's the first personality change we should have. Go ahead, Victor.
For we look on them as sick people.
Now, if we can't look on them as sick people, guess what? It means we sick. Keep reading, Victor.
We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves.
Now, that's the first personality change. Now I want you to turn to page 75, and we're going to go over step 5. Start with the very first top. Because, now listen. Go ahead and read, Victor.
When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory, and we are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Victor. Page 72. I want you to read the beginning of step 5, page 72. I told you wrong. We're going to move to 75 after this, but 72.
72, chapter 6, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it?
Now listen, look at this while he's reading. Having made our personal inventory, what should we do about it? Go ahead, Victor.
We've been trying to get a new attitude.
Here's attitude. See, this is the attitude we come in. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and inconsiderate. We get a new attitude, and what else, Victor?
A new relationship with our Creator.
New relationship with the Creator. You can't get that if you don't remove the resentments and the fear and the conduct and the guilt and the harm done to others. Walking around with a selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and inconsiderate attitude won't have that relationship with your Creator, and your instincts will be sensitive to every Tom, Dick, and Harry comes along. And they'll be able to yank you around just like you're a puppet on a yo-yo. Now, why would you keep giving your life to a sick person and not give it over to the one who gave you the instincts? Keep reading. New attitude, new relationship with God.
And to discover the obstacles in our path.
See?
We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which when completed...
Wait a minute now. That don't say make 90 meetings in 90 days. We got to get these meetings in here somewhere. We're almost finished. Keep reading.
Requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we had admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects.
Which is our screwed up attitude. Keep reading.
This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so.
Now, this is the first reason why we should do it. Keep reading.
Best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking.
Bang. Period. If we don't sit down with another human being, there's no way just making meetings and sitting around listening to witty cliches and passing them around to fellowship and acting like we know what's going on because we can speak good, which speaking is the weakest gift that man has. Looking good, talking good. Won't work. Keep reading.
Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk.
Squiggly writing.
Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they failed. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story.
Now, all means all. Each and everything. Now, he's going to emphasize it again, page 75. But here's the second reason. Keep reading.
More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life.
See, there we go.
He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents a stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees.
See, here we are. We try to act so prim and proper, but here we are laying out there. We've urinated over ourselves and, and cracked up the car and got DWI, driving while intoxicated, and standing before the magistrate and just held up to ridicule by the things we do on sprees. And then when we straighten up, someone says, "Didn't I see you doing such and such?" "Oh, no, that wasn't me." But see, today we've got the thing called internet. And people can offer fingerprints and photographs. We had this huge roller coaster in Ohio. And this thing is a monster. And all of the people that got on this roller coaster, they took pictures of them when they got off. And when they got off, old and young, male and female, all of them urinated on themselves. And somebody posted this on the internet, and they stand up there with the wet pants getting off, and they was, because it's a monster roller coaster. It causes you to urinate on yourself. And it's embarrassing. But the point is this, is the things that we do when we're on our sprees. We shudder because of the inconsistency that we do. And this is the second reason, because all of us like to live a double life. The first reason is that if we don't be completely and thorough, we may not stop drinking. And the second, if we don't sit down and get honest with someone face to face, we won't stop drinking either. Now, I want you to skip to page 75, second paragraph. He's going to emphasize this again in step 5. This is the second personality change that you're going to have.
We pocket our pride and go to it.
Okay?
Illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us.
See there? Fears go.
We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator.
What blocked us off now is removed out of the way, and we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator.
We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly.
That means that the obsession is gone, and you will know inwardly and intuitively that you will never, ever, ever, ever have to drink again. That will come within you strongly. There won't be any question. Some people say, "Well, I can't say whether I would never take a drink again." Well, I can if I stay close to the one who, if I do this work, continuing doing it. It's impossible to take a drink on the truth. And as long as I got some truth in my life, the drink will never come a part of my thinking. And we're going to emphasize this when we get to step 10. because it says the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. If it has not been removed and it still exists, that means we still have alcoholic thinking. Keep reading, Victor. Let's just get through this.
We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we had omitted anything.
Now he calls them proposals. Keep reading.
For we are building an arch through which we will walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand?
Mm-hmm. Keep reading to page 76, Victor.
If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6.
Mm-hmm.
We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable.
Now remember, willingness is the key for step 6. Keep reading.
Are we now ready to let God remove from us all things which we have admitted are objectionable?
Now let's look up here. When we look at this, in step 6, this is how we are. Long over here, short on this. When we can see a visual, there's no way possible. And I made the statement, if you got a resentment, you don't have true love in your life. Let that resonate. Because people think that they can harbor resentments, but then they love their spouse, or they love their partners, or they love their children. No, no, no. They don't exist at the same time. You see, life is a positive and a negative. You got resentments, this is what's the love is non-existence. Now, if you don't believe me, put the post of 2 batteries together at the same time. See what you get. You cannot have positive and negative at the same time. This electricity in this building, it's got a positive and a negative. You put them together, you're going to have a spark. It's called alternating current. When one's on, the other one's off. They don't operate at the same time. That's against spiritual laws and physics. So if you got resentment in your heart, then that means that you ain't got love, patience, and tolerance. Now, our effort is to be willing to give up on this, to have a balance. Shorten this, lengthen this. And we have to be willing to do this. You see, resentment, opposite of resentment is love, patience, and tolerance. Love is concern for the welfare of another human being. There's no way that we can love our children and we hold on to them. That's not love, that's possessiveness. There's no way that we can be tolerant of another human being when we do not have the patience to suffer their ignorance. In other words, tolerance is the ability to accept another person when they're absolutely and 100% and totally wrong, and you're absolutely 100% and totally right, and you can suffer their ignorance with patience. In other words, you still can have time to render to them even though you disagree with them. But see, we're people, we're so selfish. If you disagree with me, I don't want anything to do with you. I ain't got no time for you. You don't see eye to eye, that's not true tolerance. You see, Gandhi says, the only power that can turn an enemy into a friend is love. You can't bludgeon a person and make him your friend. You got to show him love, patience, and tolerance. And patience is God's timing. And anytime we got a resentment, we don't have this. We don't have the time to offer anybody. And when you look at fear, the opposite of courage is fear. If you're operating over here, see, this is our response to life. Now, over here is feelings, emotions. Over here, facts, rational thinking. When I was a child, I responded to life as a child through my feelings and emotions. But when I become a man, I gave away childish things. You see, this is how we respond to life, through resentments, fear, pride, and through sex. We don't use wisdom in regards to when we use this instinct. We don't have any humility. We got ego and we got pride. We don't have any courage because we got fear. So this is an emotional response to life. And all you got to do is ask yourself, which side did you operate on the most? You can't do both. Step 6 and 7 is how we change our emotional response to life and to people and to situation, and we can deal with them through rational thinking, or we can make decisions based on our emotions and what we feel like doing. Now you can understand when Joe told me, Larry, save your feelings for your funeral. We're going to go through emotional turmoil, but if we make the best decision that we can through our rational thinking, you see, this over here, love, patience, tolerance, humility, wisdom, these are attributable spiritual makeups. All these over here, they're negative. They're feelings and emotions. When we have resentments, we respond through fear. When we have fear, we respond through resentments. Pride is the one that justifies all of this. Instead of using wisdom when we use sex, we get in an emotional turmoil, all hot and bothered. It vaguely tells you that you shouldn't be doing this. But we don't listen to that. And that's why we got so many STDs in the world, because people don't adhere to this, using wisdom. You see, this instinct is so strong. It's one of the most powerful ones that we have. Now, here's also a medical fact. When we're inundated with heightened arousal through this instinct, it lessens the flow of blood to our brain, because it sends it down to this organ. Now, the medical fact about that is this. This is an organ. It is not your reproductive system. Your reproductive system is up here in your brain. And if you have less blood up here in your brain and it's down in this organ down here, I dare say you can make good decisions, rational decisions. That's funny, but that's a fact. You see, our parents come in and try to tell us, I don't think you ought to mess with that boy. He's not a good boy. Oh, Mom, I'm in love. Your dad says, son, leave that girl alone. They got a little wisdom in this. But see, we don't act off of wisdom. We act off of feelings. Now, I want you to consider some of the things that we do acting off of feelings with this instinct. We lie down with a person in a heightened sense of arousal just by the mere fact of how they look physically, and we produce a baby out of that union. Not even stopping to think what type of parent it's going to be. Women think that just because the guy is buffed, got these, and then they get pregnant, and he's just a heel. He has no intent, nothing about him, no quality, no character that he's going to be a good father. But you never think about that before you get pregnant. And then men lie down with these women because they look good, and then you produce a child, and you expect for them to stay home with the child. Think about that. And then you get mad because she's not a good mother. Well, of course she's not. And then we blame each other because we don't use wisdom. You do not want to produce offspring with someone that does not have basic character and attributes that's going to be a good person. So when you think about that, because Bill talks about this, turn to page 69 right quick, Victor. We got about 5 more minutes, 3 more minutes. I want you to read, referring to the list again. We review our own sex conducts over the years. We ask ourselves.
We reviewed our own sex conduct over the years past.
Mm-hmm.
Where had we been selfish?
Selfish.
Dishonest. Or inconsiderate.
Or inconsiderate. The fact that, we see selfish, all this over here on this side. No wisdom. Keep reading.
Whom had we hurt?
Uh-huh.
Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness?
Mm-hmm.
Where were we at fault?
Mm-hmm.
What should we have done instead?
See, what should we have done instead?
We got this all down on paper and looked at it. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life.
Okay, now we're going to use this. We got this thing, we got this desire. We can't quit using it. You can't suppress it. You cannot suppress a strong instinct like that. So if you can't suppress it, then you've got to be able to use it in the right context. It says a sane idea about future use. We've seen people who try to suppress this instinct. Other manifestations come out of it. So the thing is that you've got it. Now the thing is how you're going to use it. Keep reading, Victor.
We ask God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them.
Mm-hmm.
We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly. Not
to be used with just carefree carelessness. Not to be used just to, produce some type of pleasurable scene. Not to be used to change the way that we feel. Because sometimes we get lonely. Sometimes we get overly dependent. And we think by misusing or using the sex instinct that that's an appropriate use. But we're not supposed to use it this way. Now listen to what he says. Not to be used lightly or selfishly,
nor to be despised and loathed.
In other words, sex is a good thing. It is a natural instinct that we're supposed to use. It is not a nasty thing. It is a good thing. You're not supposed to loathe it. Keep reading.
Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it.
Mm-hmm.
We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we did not bring about still more harm in doing so.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter.
Each specific matter. Now, let me throw this little deal in there. You see, even in an ideal situation, and what I mean is an ideal situation, if you're married. Even if you are married, you can use sex selfishly. You can either withhold it or you can manipulate with it. You see, ladies and gentlemen, just because you're married does not mean that your spouse has to perform for you. They don't have to make up an excuse, say, I got a headache or I'm tired. If they do not want to have it, they should not be forced to have it. Anytime that we manipulate men, whine, beg for them to have it and they give in to our whims and they're not into it and you get your little reward, after it's over, you feel awful bad about that. It lets you know that's the wrong use of that instinct. So let them, it's going to tell us what to do when we hit this imperious urge. You see, then what we're trying to do is change the way that we feel, and we're imposing our wishes on our spouses, and that's the wrong use of it. Keep reading, Victor. We're going to get to page 70.
God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose.
That's right. It's bad. That's bad. That's sinful. That's this. No.
We
How
avoid
you use it. Yeah.
We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
That's right.
Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half-truth. It depends on us and on our motives. If we're sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things.
That means if we got into a relationship with a newcomer and it's caused us some heartache and caused them some heartache, and we're sorry about that, we learn our lesson. We don't do that. But if we keep trolling the rooms and messing with newcomers and interfering with people's recovery and being a catalyst or a stumbling block, this is what's going to happen. Keep reading.
We believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink.
See? Now that's in the book.
We're not theorizing. These are facts out of experience.
Now that goes both ways, ladies and gentlemen. You're supposed to have some degree of emotional stability, some degree of how we profess our years of sobriety, but yet we snatch up newcomers. And that's both ways. You see, if we're supposed to have the emotional stability, I'm not supposed to take advantage of a newcomer. And if women, you got emotional stability, you're not supposed to take advantage of a newcomer because they are emotionally unstable and they're still making decisions over here on the emotional side. That's why our slogans around says, think, 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 not feel, feel, feel. So when we look at this in the context of what it was meant to be, it gives us a different viewpoint. Keep reading, Victor.
To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others.
Now, don't say go to meetings. Say helping others. Sponsoring people. Now look at what it's going to say. Keep reading.
We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious aid urge, when to yield would mean heartache.
So therefore, this is how we move from step 6 to step 7, and we have to humble ourselves. And the point is that we have to be willing. You see, this is a change. Don't do what you want to do. Make yourself do what you don't want to do. Once we slay this, give inaction to this, this automatically is going to take its place. See, nature abhors the void. When we refuse to give in to the negative side and we're willing to change, then guess what? There's nothing else to take the place of resentment but love, patience, and tolerance. You're not going to be left with a void. But if we don't practice this, it's going to be taken up with love, patience, and tolerance. If we don't practice this, it's going to be taken up with courage. If we don't practice pride, humility comes in. You see, instead of a person being impatient, then the thing is what they want to do is not practice resentment, not practice fear, not practice sex in regards to how we go about to utilize that. There's nothing wrong with using sex in a monogamous relationship and using it for the right use. But when we use it to try to control somebody or try to dominate somebody or be overly dependent on somebody, that's the wrong use. You're going to get hurt and you're going to hurt somebody else. And the point is that there was another philosopher says, I die daily. We have to die over here to live over here. And this is the same principles of change, and it works for me too. See, I know perfectly what my character defects are, and I know the ones that I can live with and the ones that I can't. And one of the ones that I can live with, to a degree, is this one. You see, if I want to lose weight, don't eat them Twinkies and them bagels and stuff. Eat some vegetables. And change will happen. I can't eat sweets over here and expect this to happen. You can't, see, 6 and 7 is this. If we pull the weeds out of the garden, that's our job. The growth comes from the Creator. That's all we need to do is keep the weeds out. When they crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. But we don't practice this. And we'll change. That's all we have to do. But we have to have His help to do it. And we have to humbly ask Him. You see, step 10 is a reworking of steps 4 through 8 and 9 on a daily basis. And when we come back tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about the successful consummation of steps 4 through 9 and 10. See, steps 4 through 6 and 7 is a changing of the thinking. When we come in here with this type of thinking, now we've moved over here to some rational thinking. Through the power that makes Himself known and reveals Himself to us by just simply being willing to give up on this and remove the things that block us. So we'll start back tomorrow morning. Thank you for your time and attention.